Hey everyone, welcome to a deck tech on Dash.io. So this is going to be a control-oriented list. When we look at her ability, we see two different things, right? With the ability to play items off the top, there's a consideration to play her aggressively. This allows you to play things like Hadron Collider, Penetration Script, Boom Grenade, Tekla Core, aggressive items off the top of your deck during your turn while you're boosting. This also allows you to see multiple cards per turn. However, there are prevention effects in the item slot as well. So I was kind of curious what a control list would look like where we actually want to basically get 5 cards a turn and actually play off the top of our deck to prevent damage. At best, her hero ability essentially lets you have 5 card hands, which is a lot stronger than obviously any other hero. The question is whether or not that's consistent enough or if you have a good enough payoff for this kind of strategy. I don't really know if you do, but I still want to have the deck tech out there so people can jump off of this. If anyone thinks that there's something promising to this list that they want to take further, by all means go for it. So specifically looking at cards like Mini Force Field and Dissolving Shield, these are cards where if we play them during our opponent's turn, we can actually prevent damage playing off the top of our deck, converting one of our blues into a card off the top. The problem is we have resources floating, right? So the question is, how do you effectively use resources on your opponent's turn? Well, you have things like Ironhide. So we have Ironhide legs. If you want to run arms, you could also run arms as well if you feel like you don't have enough payment effects. This allows you to block for 4 with the 1 resource that you have floating, right? So if you go Mini Force Field off the top, pitching a blue, you're able to then use the 1 resource and block for 4 with the Brothers in Arms. Or if you go Dissolving Shield off the top of the deck, you can go Brothers in Arms, Ironhide legs, something like that. So you're able to fully maximize that card off the top of the deck. Other payment effects we have are going to be Oasis, and that is about it actually. So pretty simple control plan. All we're going to do is we're going to block out as much as possible. We can send proactive threats if we need to, so we do have those available to us. But the biggest thing is the Symbiosis Shot means that whenever we pay to play an item off the top of the deck during our opponent's turn to prevent damage, we can block out with our full hand and send 2 damage back to them. It doesn't seem like a lot, but the fact that we're playing a full control list means that over we're going to have a long enough game that Symbiosis Shot will eventually present lethal, especially if you also are taking some pivots to apply some pressure as well. It could be that this deck needs more win cons, and then we'd have to revisit it if we want something maybe like System Reset, but I don't know if that card is very good, so I'm not super inclined to play it. We do run Last Ditch Effort, and you do have a deterministic win con with Medkit. So Medkit's pretty interesting, right? This is just another life gain effect. Like if your opponent gives you cards to do something, you can play it off the top, or maybe you played it off the top on a previous turn and so you just gain 2 and pass. The thing is, it goes on the bottom of the deck. So at the end of the game, if your deck is just Medkits, you can just play them and cycle every 2 turns where you play a Medkit and then you Symbiosis Shot for 2. The reason why that's relevant is because since you can't attack with this unless if you play an item, hypothetically, you could end up with a draw state where your opponent doesn't have a way to kill you, but you can't load up your weapon and you have no more attacks left in deck, so you can't actually kill them. So you just have a draw. So this at least presents a lethal win condition if you're ever in a situation like that, which I think this deck could potentially end up in one if the games go long enough. But other than that, the rest of the deck is very simple. We're just going to be as defensive as possible. Really try not to let damage leak through. If your opponent does take a little bit of time stalling to set up something bigger, you do have the ability to pressure into them. And then in our sideboard for longer matchups, we have a Nitro Mechanoid package, so we're able to get our Hyperdrivers out, we're able to get our Construct flipped if we're playing into a Control Me or something like that. And this is very particular, but it is important. We do have enough to do a full Nitro Mechanoid combo. It's just going to be something you're going to have to practice on your own to get good at. I have another video I think on the channel, but I'll quickly run through it here. Your pitch stack is going to be a high octane in arsenal, a high octane somewhere in the deck, and then your last cards in deck are going to be these 6 boost cards right here. So if you're on this package, try not to block with these, don't try to play them, and specifically try to pitch stack them once you know you're not going to like reshuffle your deck or when the Mechanoid is in play, things like that. And so what you're going to do is you're going to pitch stack this. So you're going to have 2 high octanes. You're going to play it pitching a blue. And then this is a 5 card hand at the end of the game. You're going to boost with the rest of these cards, right? So you're going to boost out with the rest. This is going to give you 8 action points because of the 2 high octanes, which allows you to attack with a Mechanoid for 8 times in 1 turn. So this is enough to close out the game against most decks, especially if before that you have been chipping in with a pistol. So without the blue cards, you're able to do 47 damage just from the construct alone. When you include the blue cards, you do add a marginal amount of damage, but this should be enough to OTK anyone, even against control decks, as long as you have been, chipping in a little bit throughout the game. So this is more than enough to close out against control decks. That all you got can come in, against maybe something like OG Dash, even the new Dash. You can bring this in against Rosetta Thorn decks don't exist anymore, so this has more marginal use cases. So this could also be swapped for something more meta dependent for you. But this is good into ninjas, things like that. And then for the rest of the sideboard rounding out, we just have Arcane Barrier, and then we have better pieces for the Mechanoid combo, right? So I like Tunic and Crown of Providence for this list because Tunic allows you to pay for some of these effects, right? Like you can just go Tunic, Mini Force Field and not have to use an extra card. You can use Tunic to pay for Brothers in Arms or Ironhide or Dissolving Shield off the top of the deck or Medkit, things like that. So that means that, if you have a blue and you're looking at the top of the deck and it's just like a Dissolving Shield and you're like, man, I really don't want to pitch for that because the rest of the cards in my hand, let's say you don't have any Brothers in Arms, you just have like Firewalls, you have like a Fighting Spirit, a Sink or whatever, and you're like, I really don't want to pay an entire card to get this item off the top, then you can just Tunic for it. Or if Tunic is up and you draw Brothers in Arms but a bunch of other 3-blocks and you're like, I'm looking at the top of the deck, there's no item, I don't really want to pitch to play it off the top or pitch for this Brothers in Arms, you can just use Tunic for it. So it's very efficient. Crown of Providence lets you filter a little bit, but it also lets you arsenal a card, block with the crown, and then turn that arsenal card into another defending card. So it lets you block with 5 cards, which is pretty good for some fatigue strats. But obviously when we go Mechanoid, we need to bring in Mechanologist Armor. So these 3 will come in for your Mechanoid plan. And that's the deck. So give it a shot, let me know what you think. If this deck does have legs, I'm not super sure. I think you would need more payoffs for it. I don't think just sending Symbiosis Shot for 2 every turn is enough. And the Mechanoid plan is good, but I think you could just play Mechanoid Dash if you really need to. I think this would have been fine, maybe. I mean, it still could be good into like the PQ season. Like this probably can fatigue out Lexi. You have better defensive tools than something like Bravo, for instance, because you're able to cover breakpoints so well, especially something like Dissolving Shield and Brothers in Arms. It's really going to be difficult for them to actually like really chip through into you, as long as you're being careful with your arsenal. But that's about it. This is just really more of an experiment to see where the heroes can go in terms of direction. So just want to get this out there. But yeah, Brothers in Arms is pretty cool. So I think that's what's holding the deck together. So give it a shot. Let me know what you think. Until next time, thank you for watching.